about Chen Hengzhe, quite a different kind of character, but also independent, determined, and perhaps romantic too, in a different way. In the biography and education that she received, we could see that she's also pursuing an independent life with her own ideas. She's a professional woman. She's the first female professor at Peking University who taught world history. She wrote and published world history texts that we could still see today, and she passed away in 1976 after the Cultural Revolution. She was born at the end of the 19th century in 1893. The picture we saw show Chen Hengzhe standing between Hu Shi to her left, our right, and her husband, a chemist, Ren Hongjun, to her right, the left side of the picture. Chen Hengzhe was born in Jiangsu, Jin. So again, they belong to this well-educated, talented woman region that Dorothy Kuo and Susan Mann both wrote about, and I have you read and summarized. Although her family came from Hunan, but she's born in Jiangsu, Jin, at the turn of the century. So educated family, but a real different time came when she got herself a scholarship to go to the United States in 1914. That's 3 years after, the third year after Republic of China was established, and she entered Vassar College. You could look it up on your map, Vassar College in United States, where Chen Hengzhe got her BA degree. After which, she went to Chicago, University of Chicago, got a master's degree in Western history. She published many works. Later we could view those. The first novel in 17, and all in vernacular language, Baihua, on this very interesting overseas Chinese students newspaper edited by Hu Shi. This was before Hu Shi had the idea to have a cultural revolution, revolution of the language, establishing Baihua Wen movement. Certainly well before Lu Xun wrote That Man's Diary. Hu Shi obviously was very affectionate and admired Sophie, he called Sophie Chen Hengzhe. But Chen Hengzhe decided to marry to the other man, this chemist, who went to Cornell together at the time Hu Shi was there as a chemist. 1920, September, they got married, and they returned to Peking University when she started teaching Western history and English. She's definitely the first female professor of modern China, and she had made some remarks about why she chose to be with Ren, who would defend her honor later in Sichuan, and not the talented but more self-centered, she thought, person by the name of Hu Shi. She unfortunately resigned from teaching in 1922, so you could see that there's still restrictions, self-imposed or socially conditioned then, when she started carrying a child. But so she worked at home and began to write. Because she was trained at Chicago on world history, so she started to write Western history and published, and were used during the wartime, and before and during the wartime, as a middle school and high school text of world history, of Western history, and we could still see them, these texts, if you Googled. Chen Hengzhe and Hu Shi were very, very close. There were many evidence, textual and otherwise. And the more interesting one, perhaps, is the fact that Hu Shi named his own daughter after Chen. So after Chen Hengzhe's English name, Sophia, so Hu's only daughter, Hu Shufei, unfortunately passed away as a teenager at the age of 17 later, was named after Sophie. So our understanding, of course, is that Chen Hengzhe was a remarkably independent woman, well educated, with her own career. She thought that it's equally important for women to be a mother, so she started writing at home rather than going out to teach. But she wanted to be an independent professional, and she's an accomplished author in her own field, in world history and Western history. She was not approved of the kind of women in upper societies that she saw. Those who decided to marry to rich husbands or families and be showing off, or those who had opportunities to be educated but chose instead to be a parasite, she called, to the husbands. So she later taught at Southeastern University in 23. This is 东南大学. It's the later Nanking University or National Central University, because her husband, the chemist Ren Hongjun, sort of move about these various universities. 25, she returned to Beijing, and in 10 years, just before the war, when Ren Hongjun got appointed to be the president of Sichuan University, Chen went with him and became a history professor there. Ren also openly defended Chen Hengzhe's in her honor, when sort of warlords in Sichuan teased her in his company. So you could say that Chen perhaps made the right choice in terms of choosing the right man, certainly in her mind, than to be more closely related to Hu Shi. Chen himself died in Shanghai in 1970. The works that she left us were many, from the 1917 to 27 to 28, and the world history text, biography, and collection of prose essays. She's obviously creative, very independently minded, and she's a professional history professor of her own right. A few things could be of interest here. The 小雨点 that got published in 新青年, Hu Shi had the idea about Bai Huawen movement. I would say in many ways inspired by Chen's writing in the new vernacular style, 小雨点. The other thing is that she wrote the history of Renaissance, European history, and a person who break new grounds in Western history at an important university in both Peking U and Nanking U later. So in Chen, we saw a less radical but a very, very different independent career woman, an intellectual, a scholar.